Truth Unveiled here, and today I want to bring this to your attention because this really hasn't been talked about. This has to do with the nuclear summit that was held a couple of days ago, and I want to talk about this because there were some very telling things and some very chilling things that went on at this summit just a couple of days ago. And so I'm here at Bloomberg, and it says nuclear drones from dark web cited by Obama in terror scenario. Now remember, the question you should always be asking yourself is why? But it says terrorists flying drones to spread highly radioactive material over a civilian area. That's part of the nightmare scenario President Barack Obama urged world leaders to consider as they debated better ways of controlling nuclear material. Why would they even be debating that to begin with? But let's keep going. It says, with the aid of apocalyptic fake newscasts, Obama told the group of 50 heads of state and foreign ministers in Washington on Friday to imagine that a terrorist group had bought isotopes through brokers on the so-called dark web. One shipment was picked up in transit by radiation monitors, but others were thought to be still on the move. The terrorists were believed to be planning to use a drone to distribute the material. Would authorities react in time? Oh, what terrorists? Because last I checked, all the terrorists are funded by the same people who were at this world organization to begin with. And why would they be using apocalyptic fake newscasts? And why even mention the apocalypse to begin with? Just like X-Man Apocalypse? Are things starting to add up now? I hope so, but let's keep going. It says, this hypothetical war game, oh, it's hypothetical, was described by a UK official speaking on condition of anonymity because the meeting was closed. Obama's aim was to push the men and women around the table to think about how their governments would respond. Prime Minister David Cameron told reporters the threat was serious. Yeah, because there's always a threat, isn't there? And remember, why do they gather to these summits and stuff to begin with? To talk about how they want to enslave us even more. And it even says, would authorities react in time? What are they timing? Martial law. But it goes on to say, so many summits are about dealing with things that have already gone wrong, and we are trying to put right, he said ahead of the meeting. Oh, that is the most hypocritical statement I've ever heard. But it goes on to say, this is a summit about something we are trying to prevent. Oh, they're the ones preventing it, all right. The concept of terrorists and nuclear materials coming together is obviously a very chilling prospect. In the light of the Belgian attacks, we know is a threat that is only too real. Oh, because who funded the Belgium attacks anyway? Hint, hint, Skull and Bones. Oh, but let's keep going. It says, discussions on the sidelines of the two-day nuclear security summit in Washington covered issues from the latest sanctions against North Korea to the Iranian nuclear accord. Notice how they're still dealing with what? Rogue nations, Iran and North Korea, because those are two of the countries that don't have Rothschild banks in them. So of course they're focusing on those two. While originally a forum for Russia, the US and other major powers to discuss nuclear weapons safety, counterterrorism issues, because that's what they want us to believe, dominated the official discussions in the wake of so-called terrorist attacks in Brussels, Paris, West Africa, the Middle East, and the US over the last year, all of which were funded by the same people who are even at these events. Oh my gosh, oh, but they got us fooled. Not anymore. But it goes on to say, before reporters were asked to leave the summit meeting hall Friday, Obama said, we will then be showing a video which focuses attention on the possible scenarios that might emerge with respect to terrorist networks, which will give us a good opportunity to test those areas where we still have work to do. What work do they have to do? Enforcing martial law when they're the ones who are going to cause it to begin with. They know exactly what they're doing. Then it goes on to say the use of drones for everything from adventure films to covert warfare has soared worldwide. In a boom fueled largely by hobbyists, the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, predicts 2.5 million drones will be sold this year and annual sales will climb to 7 million by 2020. Okay, who is buying all of these drones? Where are these drones coming from? Oh, of course, the UK official said there's evidence the Islamic State tried to get their hands on drones. Oh, I wonder who's funding the Islamic State. They're not going to tell you that, will they? But it goes on to say how 130 countries have radiological material and how, yeah, this is a real threat because what are they trying to do? Create fear. And they even tell us that they're creating fear, but they're, of course, blaming it on ISIS and saying we have to defend this attack or potential scenario from ISIS. But there's a bigger agenda behind this. Why would they even be preparing for this so-called scenario to begin with? What exactly are they getting ready for? I hope you're seeing the bigger agenda behind all this because there's always an agenda behind everything. Like I said, the question you should always be wondering and asking yourself is why? Why would world leaders come together and talk about potential so-called terrorists and potential drones and nuclear action to begin with? Why would they even be discussing such a things, and why today of all times? And not to mention, this is it a coincidence that this summit is being held just a few days after Belgium, the same event that they're the ones who funded it and prepared for it, along with the Zionists? Oh, you bet. Oh, but they're not going to tell you that, will they? But here I am at the actual website that talks about the Nuclear Security Summit, which was held back on March 31st and April 1st of this past year, 2016. But it goes on to say the countries and international organizations attending NSS 2016, and I'll leave the links below. But the reason I'm showing you this is because I want you to see the bigger agenda behind all this and see just what they're preparing for and getting us mentally conditioned and ready for. Because if you think that this is, oh, this is just a scenario and oh, it's just a fake and it's not actually going to happen, I suggest you think again. But as you can see, there were over 50 nations that participated. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I also want to tell you who was also there, because it wasn't just countries. It was also the International Criminal Police Organization, or Interpol, also our favorite, the UN depopulation. Anytime you see the UN, alarm bells should be ringing. And then we have the International Atomic Energy Agency, and our favorite, the EU. Anytime you see the European Union, that should also ring some alarm bells, because what? Socialism. And that is the goal for all of this, as well as Bolshevism, communism, and other Zionist schemes that they don't want you to know about, Bo, but we see exactly what they're getting ready for. Remember, what is the goal? Problem, reaction, solution, nothing new under the sun. But it even talks about the history of the NSS and why they do it. And it says in his 2009 Prague speech, President Obama stated that nuclear terrorism is the most immediate and extreme threat to global security, because that's what they want us to believe. That's the biggest threat. Just like climate change, right? They're all lies. They are lying to you. It's time to see the truth for what it is. But it goes on to say, to mitigate this threat, the president urged that we act with purpose and without delay, announcing a new international effort to secure vulnerable nuclear material around the world that will begin with the so-called global summit on nuclear security that the U.S. will host. Because see, that's what they do. They just, what do? They just come together once again and talk about how they want to slave us even more and perpetuate these so-called terrorist attacks when we know who the real terrorists are. I hope you're seeing this, and I hope you're seeing the bigger agenda behind all this. Remember, what are they getting ready for? The New World Order, martial law, one world government, dictatorship. That is exactly what they are getting ready for. And I'm here at Forbes, and it talks about fallout from the Nuclear Security Summit. And no, this was not an April Fool's, but it goes on to say the Nuclear Security Summit that just ended Friday in Washington, D.C. wrangled over several thorny nuclear proliferation and so-called terrorism issues, because we know who the real terrorists are, and involved over 50 countries. But the two countries on everyone's mind were Russia and China. Why are they always mentioning Russia and China? Why are they always mentioning these two nations? Could it be because they're rogue nations? Could it be because they're always trying to focus it on Russia, always put the attention on Putin, trying to demonize Russia any way they can, just like what we saw with the Panama Papers? Is that what they're trying to do? Of course it is. By the way, the nation of Israel was also at this so-called summit as well. Oh, but don't put the attention on Israel. Don't talk about America. They're the innocent ones, aren't they? Let's keep going. going. China, because they have started on the world's largest nuclear buildup in 50 years, and Russia, because they decided not to attend at all. I wonder why. It goes on to say the fourth NSS in the series begun by the Obama administration showcased definite successes, particularly the significant global reduction in nuclear weapons. No, they mean the plain reduction of humans, depopulation. It goes on to talk about how they talked about nuclear material stockpiles, the increased security on nuclear facilities, the dozen countries that are now free of weapons grade materials, a newly amended nuclear protection treaty, and the historic nuclear deal with Iran that has so far gone as planned, because what they're targeting Iran for World War III. Not only that, but why would they need increased security on nuclear facilities? Remember, anytime you see increased security, the biggest thing that should be going on in your head is martial law. But it goes on to say front and center were potential nuclear terrorist threats, because there's always a threat. Not surprising given last week's Brussels attack and the terrorist surveillance of nuclear scientists and facilities, because that is what they want us to believe. They want to keep feeding us these lies and propaganda that, oh, there's a threat over there. Oh my gosh, there's a threat over here. Oh, everybody fear for your life. Look out, nuclear threat, nuclear threat. That's always the agenda that they're going to keep feeding us. And I hope you see it, because what? Mind control. They want to control everything, and then they have to blame it on North Korea, blame it on Pakistan, blame it on Russia, blame it on China, blame it on Iran, blame it on this nation, blame it on that nation, blame it on anyone that's not the US, Israel, or the Zionists. Oh, because if you do, then you're considered a potential terrorist. If you do, at least that's according to government documents, because the governments, they're really trying to protect you, aren't they? Now, the Forbes article goes on to talk about how they think, oh, China is, arming themselves for nuclear war. We have to watch out for China, watch out for China, watch out for anyone that's not the American US government, as well as the Zionists in Israel, because, oh, they want us to keep believing the lies of mainstream media. But I'm here at Time, and I'm here because I'm showing you, it says, look at the headline. Yes, Obama really is worried about a Manhattan nuke. And there's even a video on this, and I'm going to leave the link for the video so that you can see that Obama has even said that he's worried about a nuke going off in Manhattan. Why would he be worried about this, and why would he use Manhattan specifically and not New York? Why would he even say that? And by the way, is it a coincidence or surprise that they're so-called planning for this? Is this what they're planning for? Are they planning for a nuke to go off in Manhattan and then blame it on Russia, Iran, or any so-called rogue nation that they choose to, even though we know they're the ones behind it? Are they the ones planning and staging all this stuff? What are they getting ready for, and why would they even have a terrorist or nuclear scenario of nuclear drones by so-called terrorists? What are they getting ready for? And by the way, why hasn't this been reported that much is the better question. Remember, we always need to be thinking about this stuff. Always keep our eyes open. Always keep our eyes peeled. I'm going to leave the links below so you can see this stuff for yourself and know that this is not a joke. It's not a game. Hopefully you're seeing it though. This is Truth Unveiled here. Shalom.